from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, oil state senators gather to discuss the RFS and agribusiness capturing the carry.
You have to have a plan. What are you trying to accomplish? You can't just put it in the bin and hope that the price improves.
Are livestock methane calculations correct? New research doesn't think so. And meet the Montana man behind the Capitol Christmas tree.
Ag Day, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas isn't backing down from his anti-ethanol stance, and he'll continue to make his case to the White House later today. Senator Cruz is expected to meet with members of the Trump cabinet today to discuss the administration's support of the biofuels industry. Cruz, of course, is from the oil-rich state of Texas. Farm Journal Washington consultant Jim Wiesmeyer says Cruz has made it clear his objections to the volume requirements of the renewable fuel standard. Now, just last week, the EPA released its 2018 volume levels for biofuels. The ethanol industry applauding that final rule, which did not scale back the fuel blend. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, who is also from an oil state, had discussed the possibility of trimming volume levels, but that idea was quickly quashed by lawmakers from corn-growing states like Iowa.
He thought that holding up Northey was leverage to get EPA to change their mind. But EPA made a decision on November 30th, and so it seems to me he doesn't have much leverage until next year when they go through this process like they do every year of determining the amount of biofuels that have to be mixed in with petroleum products.
Wiesmeyer says Pruitt, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue, and Energy Secretary Rick Perry are expected to attend the meeting with Cruz. The U.S. is set to impose new tariffs on imported biodiesel from Argentina and Indonesia. Now, this follows a ruling by the U.S. International Trade Commission that Argentine and Indonesian subsidies for their domestic biodiesel industries are harming U.S. producers. The ITC says those unfair subsidies encourage shipments of cheap fuel to the U.S. The Commerce Department can begin issuing countervailing duties on imports from the two countries, saying the subsidies break international trade rules. Recent comments made by Mexico's ambassador to the U.S. further illustrates the North American Free Trade Agreement may be in trouble. Geronimo Gutierrez telling CBS News that the odds are 50-50 that NAFTA will be terminated. Now, Mexico's ambassador made those comments following the fifth round of negotiations on the 24-year-old trade pact. Despite the odds maker claims, Gutierrez told CBS that he's moderately optimistic the three countries can reach an agreement in the next few months. The U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said following the conclusion of those talks that he's concerned about the lack of headway. The talks resume January 23rd. Meanwhile, Twitter was ablaze Wednesday by farmers worried that the president will walk away from NAFTA. They're taking to Twitter to plead with him not to. They're using the hashtag Farmers for NAFTA. Individual farm and ag groups are tweeting the benefits of NAFTA. Arkansas lawmakers are scheduled to meet next week to vote on a proposed ban on the use of dicamba. In advance of that meeting, Monsanto asking an Arkansas judge Tuesday to issue a preliminary injunction. The agribusiness asking a county judge to issue that preliminary injunction, putting the ban on hold until the company can challenge it in court. The Arkansas Plant Board approved the ban of dicamba from April 16th through October 31st. That is set to go before a legislative committee next week. Crop comments today taking us to Minnesota. Harvest was slowed up by weather, but it's wrapped up for most farmers. Mike Hoffman has that and joins us now with today's crop comments. Mike?
Good morning, Clinton. Farmers in southeastern Minnesota got a break in the weather to finish some field work. Tim Mack of Bridgeview Farm shared this photo. He says after a stretch of cold, damp weather during most of November in southeastern Minnesota, they took advantage of a few warm, dry days to get corn stalks baled on December 1st. Tim says that's the latest they've ever baled like that. And taking a look at the weather map, boy, a big wet system moving through the southeastern part of the country, even some of the white stuff pretty far south. We'll have your forecast coming up, but here are some hometown temps first.
Farm Journal On Air is the go-to app for American agriculture. Ag Day, AgriTalk, U.S. Farm Report, and more. 24/7 access to all of your favorite shows, TV and radio. In your hands, on demand. Farm Journal On Air. Download the app today.
All right, next in agribusiness, Tyne Morgan joins us to discuss futures contracts, what they're telling us about price, and our Drovers TV report will hear about some new research on animal methane emissions. It may raise some doubts on claims about the negative impact livestock have on the environment. And despite the turmoil caused by Washington lawmakers, this symbol of Christmas can heal wounds, at least temporarily.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. Ag Day, brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new.
Statistics Canada releasing its updated and final Canadian crop production estimates for 2017. The agency raising all major crop pegs above its estimate in September and August. Now, despite producers' concerns of summer drought on the prairies and heavier than average precipitation in parts of eastern Canada this summer, farmers are reporting that yields have improved from their early expectations in that July 2017 farm survey.
We started off the day with some bearish news from Stats Canada. They reported that the Canadian wheat crop was going to be quite a bit larger than the trade had expected. That initially sent the spring wheat market lower. The winter wheat contracts followed suit, and we ended with a sharply lower close really across the board here. So some negative news from Canada to start the day. In the grander scheme of things, Russia has also provided some negative headlines. They harvested a record wheat crop in Russia by a wide margin, and they are doing a lot of export business, really making it tough for the U.S. to compete. It's been really difficult for the U.S. to gain any kind of foothold on the export market as it is, and now we find out that Russia's got a crop that was even bigger than we had thought previously, and that's making things very, very difficult for U.S. wheat exporters. The live cattle market was lower again here on Wednesday, posting some fresh multi-week lows, and we've kind of generally trended lower here in this live cattle market since we topped out in early November. Cash cattle trade, we saw a little bit of it here this week. 117 to 118, I believe, caught most of the early week trade, and that was down from 120 to 121 last week. So down $3 to $4 here off the bat, and it could get a little bit worse before it gets better with the way the board has acted, the way that the box of beef market has kind of consolidated at some lower levels here. Those are all kind of bad signs here for what could happen in the cash cattle market later this week. Funds have likely been sellers of cattle futures here. They've held a pretty aggressive long position for several months now, but we've seen open interest decline a little bit on this break, which implies that we're seeing a little bit of liquidation, so the large money manager perhaps taking some of their chips off the table here ahead of year's end. Again, Joe Veck, the CME Group here in Chicago.
So just what are these future contracts telling us about prices and storage? Well, Tyne Morgan talks Carrie in today's analysis from the road.
Here now with Angie Setzer of Citizen Grain. Angie, when we look at the carry in this market, I keep hearing from analysts that say the carry's your friend, the carry's your friend. What does that mean?
Well, it means that deferred months are paying more than nearby, which is great. In times of burdensome supplies, you'll start to see the market pay in a way to keep the pipeline or the supplies out of that pipeline for that period of time. The problem is what you tend to see happen in carry markets is that once the front month goes off, so once the December month goes off or the December futures month goes off here in a couple weeks, very shortly you tend to see the next month in line fall into that old trading range. So what happens is you'll see right now a lot of guys will be putting stuff in the bins trying to capture that carry. They'll say that, well, the July board's trading at 370 or 375. The fact remains that as time goes on, a lot of times you'll see that next month, that deferred month, fall back into where that nearby month has gone off without a fundamental change. So a lot of times I'll tell folks that are trying to capture that carry, well then if you're looking for 360, 365, 370, you're probably better off to start locking in some of those July futures instead of rolling the dice and hoping it'll be there when the time comes to move that grain.
Yeah, so what is your advice right now for a lot of those farmers that are looking to store that grain and are storing that grain? I mean, really, what should they be thinking about right now?
The biggest thing is you have to have a plan. What are you trying to accomplish? You can't just put it in the bin and hope that the price improves. So you need to have a target in mind of pricing that you're looking for, and it needs to be realistic. Be aware of what's going on in the market structure and the likelihood that we could be staying pretty flat as time goes forward. And secondly, be aware of the fact that there's a significant amount of commercial holdings, much more than what we saw a year ago, and they need to be aware that that's competition against them. As soon as that basis gets good enough, you're going to see those commercials start to dump that grain into the pipeline, and that's going to limit the opportunities that farmers may see basis-wise.
So realistically, you're thinking more sideways trade in this corn market?
Unfortunately, without something major happening in South America, we really could be sideways for quite some time. And with, like I said before, with the deferred falling off and the going into the front month, you could start to see where we trade into that 335, 345 range again for the March. And no one wants to see that at this point.
No, Angie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Let's take a quick break on Ag Day, and then we'll be right back with a check of weather.
For help solving your cash grain problems, call Angie Setzer with Citizens LLC at 800-858-3738. Ag Day, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here, looking at this cold front working its way south all the way into northern Mexico and parts of Texas with snow.
There are places in northern Mexico that are getting and accumulating snow before most of the Midwest this year. The cold air's gone that far south. And this system is going to be moving through the southeastern parts of the country, and on the northern fringe of the rain, even in the southeast, there may be some wet snowflakes coming down. We'll show you the maps coming up. Farther north, it's all weak systems. This is another cold front moving through the Great Lakes. That's shifting the winds a little bit, giving some of you your first dose of lake effect snow, like along the shores of southern Lake Michigan and parts of the eastern Great Lakes as well. You can see another area of low pressure diving south. This will be more of a front range, far western plains type of a system. So let's put the maps into motion. Look at the rain just spreading across the southeast. Southern Georgia, southern South Carolina, southern Alabama, much of the panhandle of Florida getting some rain, and the snow going way south into northern portions of Mexico for this time of the year. Snow starts to head back into the Denver area for a short period of time. You can see as we head into tomorrow morning then, another system starting to dive through the northern plains, reinforcing shot of cold air. This will have a little bit of light snow with it, and look at the light snow there just along the northern fringes of the rain all the way down into southern Alabama, southern Mississippi. Our model is actually showing some wet snowflakes mixing in, and that goes into the panhandle of Florida. We'll see if that happens, but that's what our model is showing late in the day tomorrow. Some of that snow will be moving through the Great Lakes with that next system. There's a precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours, adding in the next 36. You can see the vast majority of the moisture is all through the Southland along the Gulf Coast from Texas all the way to Florida and into the southeastern portions of the Atlantic coast as well. This is all very light precipitation farther north. Now, it might be a few inches of snow in places, but it's not going to amount to much when you melt it all down. Adding in the next 36 hours on the snow, a lot of it's lake effect, a little bit with that next system coming southward through the northern plains as well. There's the high temperatures, only 20s in the far northern plains, only 40s along the Gulf Coast, which is amazing for this time of the year. Lows tomorrow morning, 20s to 40s as well, even some 30s into South Texas. And then you can see the cold air remains across the Midwest tomorrow, all because of the jet stream. And what you'll notice is we just see reinforcing shots of energy coming down into the trough, just keeping it where it is. And we see more of that heading right on into most of next week. That means warm out west, though. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Santa Fe, New Mexico. First of all, partly sunny, a snow shower possible, high of 32 degrees. Good deal of sunshine and cold in Mankato, Minnesota today, high of just 21. And Macon, Georgia, cloudy with periods of rain, high of 47.
New research takes a closer look at animal methane emissions. Drover's Greg Henderson shares the details straight ahead. And even in Washington, D.C., often the center of dysfunction for the country, lawmakers can take time to celebrate the season.
Receive a free trial of the Daily Grain Plan newsletter from Roach Ag Marketing. Text Roach to 31313. Start your subscription today by texting Roach to 31313.
Drover's TV on Ag Day is brought to you by QLF. For 40 years, QLF has been proud to support American farmers that feed the world.
New analysis from the U.S. Meat Export Federation showing the U.S. beef sector is having a banner year. As of right now, the industry is set to break $7 billion in beef exports this year. That's only the second time since record keeping began. USMEF says beef exports for the first 10 months of 2017 are 9% higher than this time last year, and it's up 16% in value. From our partners at Drovers, for decades, scientists have sought to measure animal methane emissions to determine the impact food animals have on the environment. Those studies often providing unfavorable results for animal agriculture. The results are usually cited as a reason that all forms of animal production be halted. Well, new research from Penn State University suggesting current estimates of total livestock methane emissions may rely on outdated factors and do not fully consider feed intake and differences in animal diets or the facilities used to store manure.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says livestock production is responsible for 36% of methane production, but the researchers said work around the world has shown that variability in enteric methane emissions can be explained largely with variability in feed dry matter intake.
Henderson says those data gaps leave uncertainty in methane emission figures, and researchers believe the amount of gas food animals release is open for debate. Meanwhile, cattle markets ending 2017 relatively strong. Boxed beef is down from November, but holding into the final month of the year. Fed cattle in the same situation. Even feeder cattle and stockers remain a surprise as 2017 comes to a close.
Feeder cattle markets have also done very well this fall. We've seen, relatively little seasonal pressure. For the bigger feeder cattle, feedlot demand has continued very strong. Feedlots have lots of incentive to feed cattle, keep those feedlots full, and they've continued to move cattle through pretty quickly. On the lightweight end, there's been good stocker demand this fall. We've seen much less than usual seasonal price pressure through the fall. So even though numbers are bigger this year, we continue to see these markets quite strong.
All right, when we come back, the Capitol Christmas tree stands as a symbol of the holiday season. We'll take you back to its roots as we head in the country.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever Ag Tech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
The Christmas tree standing in front of the U.S. Capitol has now officially been lit up for the holiday season, and House Speaker Paul Ryan had the honor of flipping the switch Wednesday night on the 79-foot-tall Engelmann spruce. The tradition of placing a Christmas tree at the Capitol dates back to the 1960s. Well, this year the tree comes from Kootenai National Forest in Montana. Harvesting that tree took place 2 weeks ago, and the sawyer who had the privilege of manning the chainsaw is a third-generation logger from Montana. His name is Pete Talmadge. We watch Pete at work in this video from the National Forest Service. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy duty pickups.